A major update in the Nolan Wells case, the new timeline, plus the unnamed witnesses now exposed.
There's been a lot of people that have been contacted and interviewed, and there's a lot of people who were there that day that voluntarily came forward to tell what they know.
This report goes a long way in identifying, who may be a witness to those critical hours and minutes that there are gaps of information.
A Nolan Wells bombshell report tonight. Does it reveal new witnesses? And because of the new timeline report, is there a timeline shift in what happened the afternoon and evening? Nolan Wells seemingly disappears. His body found washed up at Horn Island. Not only has the timeline been analyzed by the Cajun Navy, the U.S. Cajun Navy, based on all sorts of statistical data, new photos are emerging. Take a look at this photo before we go to the Cajun Navy. Look at this. Check out what you're seeing. Look at all the boats surrounding where Nolan was. Leave up the photo out to Caitlin Becker, senior national correspondent, New York Post, star of New York Postcast, their new podcast. Caitlin, what are we seeing?
Well, what we're seeing here comes from this new report from the United Cajun Navy, and you're seeing several boats strung together. This is one of the first images that we've seen of this certain configuration of boats there. They're all identified, one of which was the boat that Nolan came out there on. There's several others kind of anchored with it and tied up, which begs the question of where was Nolan when this photo was taken, because it's unclear if he's actually in it. What time was this photo actually taken? So what you're seeing here is, as you said, a potential pool of witnesses.
Hey, Caitlin, look at this. There's boat number 1. There's boat X. There's boat number 2. There's boat number 3. And there's a boat from which the photo is taken. Now, look in the water. Much has been made. Nolan Wells was drinking. Okay, well, apparently everybody was. They all have containers, open containers in the water. Okay, as far as I know, that's not a felony. Boat number 1, full of people. Boat X, full of people. Boat number 2, full of people. Boat number 3, full of people. People on the boat from which the photo was taken. Some of these boats tied together. You know what that means in my world, Caitlin Becker, joining us from the New York Post? Let me see, Caitlin, please. That means witnesses. See, when I look at that, I see witnesses. Other people say, hey, there's people having a good time. I see witnesses. Do you see all those people?
And a lot of them.
Who were they? Have they been spoken to? Have they been polygraphed? What can they tell me?
That is the question, right? We don't know from an investigative standpoint who has been spoken to, exactly who is in this photo, and what they have or haven't told law enforcement, because there hasn't been really any transparency there. But from what our reporting has showed, there have been dozens of people who have spoken to law enforcement as witnesses. But Nancy, we don't know if it's any of these people that you're seeing in this little cove area right here. And the timing, I think, is really important, because these images are taken right around, I think the timeline's about 3:30-ish, 4:30-ish, when the boat that Nolan came out there on leaves and starts taking on water. That's one of the pegs for the timeline. When these photos were actually taken, that is a peg for a timeline. But what we don't know is where Nolan is. There he is. You can see that image right there. But we don't know is where Nolan was when that first image that we saw with all of those boats kind of tied together, when that was taken.
My husband and I, we have had countless conversations with all of our children about the importance of understanding when you are moving in different spaces with people that do not look like you. And it's unfortunate that we have to have these conversations.
There's nothing there. Nolan is not on the boat. There's nobody that looked like Nolan on the boat. Let's get to this Cajun Navy geospatial timeline and vessel movement analysis document. Now, this was something that was breaking news. Look at what happened. Look at all of this. Blah, 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 blah. I saw another weirdo online Just pumping this up, pumping it up. That dude used his whole live stream to talk about this, and it's a nothing burger. I went and reviewed it before I ever put it out to you guys, so I'm not going to mislead you and lead you astray and lie to you so I can get viewers and I can get people on here so I can sell you something. I'm not going to do that. We reviewed this thing, and it's a nothing burger. I don't even know why the Cajun Navy put this out. There's nothing there. Maybe it gives people fodder. They can create a lie because they know you're not going to read 26 pages. But I'm going to have Grant read the synopsis because we wrote you a quick synopsis on what you will see and won't see, and I'm going to go through the document so you know we didn't just make this up. All right? Grant, roll it.
Yes, sir. The United Cajun Navy report does not determine how Nolan Wells died or assign responsibility to anyone. Its most important finding is that a major gap remains in the timeline between Nolan's last independent corroborated sighting and the reported 4:31 p.m. departure of the boat he arrived on. The report also says the 4:31 departure time has not been verified through GPS, engine, or other electronic records, and that video showing approximately 3:23 and 4:27 may be important but cannot be treated as confirmed event times without the original files and metadata. The report also documents changes in position of several boats, including Boat X and Frontier Bay, but it cannot establish exactly when they moved, where they went, who was aboard, and whether those movements were connected to Nolan's disappearance. Finally, it also does not establish when or why the Triton began taking on water. The main recommendation is to obtain original videos, phone and location data, vessel GPS, and engine records, and complete passenger roster so investigators can build a verified minute-by-minute timeline.
Now, thank you, Grant. What he said was, it's a nothing burger. Pull it up. Get it back on the screen. It's a nothing burger. I'm going to walk you through this thing so you know that I didn't just make it up. We're going to do it real quick. So pretty much what they said is that they don't have any information enough to determine anything new in this case. They have a couple pictures that I've already looked at that doesn't show Nolan and not one picture on here. Just so you guys know, Warren Hudson and the boys that have been accused have all given a timeline to me where I can adequately and confidently say they were all gone when that last boat was towed out at around 4:30. Everybody that was on that boat, except for, I would say, 3 people, Nolan being one of them, did not return. Everybody else returned on the boat. The boat logs are there, and all of the above. And the other people who didn't return are accounted for, except for Nolan, unfortunately. And so there's nothing new under the sun here that we're going to find out. I wish there was. When it is, I'm going to let you guys know. But just so that we can do a quick briefing through this document, they show a picture here. They have some exhibits on here, Boat 1, Boat 2, Boat 3, Boat X, and then they have Warren on Palm Beach, okay? And obviously, just so you guys know, there were 3 boats that went out in Nolan's group. The kids that he went out with went on 3 boats. They all returned. Unfortunately, Nolan was not with them because according to every documented conversation that I've had and every documented statement that has been made public, they all said that he wanted to stay on the island with that girl, and they all left. Okay? So you go down to the document, it says investigative focus, and it tells you what they're going to investigate right here. It says at what time, which boats were present, which boats moved, when did they move, who was on board of them, and all of this. That's all they're saying. Executive findings, they talk about the GPS locations of some of the boat positions and all of this, which means absolutely nothing. There's nothing new to even talk about here. It talks about the 4:31 departure hinge is what it says, and it just talks about that there was a departure time. It gives a geotrack location of, the boat that Nolan came in on, which was Wyatt's boat. And then it says witness material. It tells you nothing. Late observation. It talks about somebody having a notable observation at 7:30, saying that Nolan was not on the island anywhere that they could find. Nowhere in sight is what it says right here. So they have this gap between 4:30 and 7:30, which is what they're referring to. It looked like they have GPS location and everything and all of the documents that they have pertaining to this, giving a gap. 4:31, which we know that's when the boys, was starting to sink and they end up leaving. All the boats that Nolan came in on were already gone. He could have got on other boats, but obviously he didn't because he's lost his life. 7:30 is a gap where people are saying that they did not see Nolan. Now, however, We still don't know if that was true, that they did not see Nolan anywhere. I mean, it's true that they probably didn't see Nolan anywhere, but that don't mean Nolan wasn't still there. He could have been off somewhere else that they didn't see. So there's still this gap, and this document does not cover the gap. It just continues on. They give this little grid that says evidence classification and limitations. You can go through and read this. TMZ actually launched this. They give you another grid that says source media inventory. It tells you what JPEG files that they have, and it kind of give you a little bit of background on that. So you know exactly what they have, what they don't have. It gives a description. Here's some of the documentation that it shows, GPS location of the boat area. I think, I can't see which one this is. Let's say one of them around, it's at 1.6 meters. Vessel.
His friends called for him more than once. The boat was taking on water, they were leaving, and Nolan Wells laughed, shook his head, and told them he would find another way back. That was the last time Warren Hudson saw him alive. Within minutes, the Triton pulled away from Horn Island with 7 people on board. Nolan was not one of them. What happened in the 3 hours that followed is the question gripping an entire country. And a 22-page report just confirmed one thing above everything else. Far more people were present on that island than anyone has fully accounted for. The United Cajun Navy carries no badges. They hold no official law enforcement authority. What they are is a volunteer-driven emergency response organization, one that built its reputation after Hurricane Katrina, when they mobilized boats to pull thousands of people out of flooded neighborhoods across New Orleans. Since then, the organization has extended its work into missing persons searches, disaster recovery, and community crisis response. When Nolan Wells disappeared from Horn Island on the 4th of July, the United Cajun Navy stepped in. They put out a public call asking anyone who had been on that island that day to submit anything they had: photographs, videos, social media posts, GPS data. People responded. Over time, the organization took everything that came in and organized it into a 22-page working analytical report. Brian Trasher, the organization's vice president, confirmed the document was delivered directly to Wells's family, their attorneys, and law enforcement. All 3 parties confirmed they received it. What the report contains is not a conclusion. It does not identify who is responsible for anything. It does not determine how Nolan died, and it does not establish that a crime was committed. What it does is something the public had not seen before. It maps out how many people were at Horn Island that afternoon, where the boats were positioned, and exactly how wide the gaps in this timeline actually are. On page 12 of that report sits a single photograph. It shows a cluster of boats anchored close together off the shore of Horn Island. 6 vessels are identified: the Triton, the Palm Beach, Boat X, and 3 others labeled Boat 1, Boat 2, and Boat 3. Several people are visible on the decks and in the surrounding water. The photograph was not taken by the United Cajun Navy. It was submitted by a woman named Caitlin Brochard, who said she was on Horn Island that afternoon. Brochard also made a social media post that the UCN included in their report. In it, she stated that when her group left Horn Island at approximately 7:30 that evening, Nolan Wells was, in her words, nowhere in sight. That detail places Brochard and her group at the scene during the critical window of this investigation. But the question her photograph raises is the one that has not been fully answered. Every person visible in that image may have been positioned near the exact location where Nolan was last seen. Has law enforcement identified all of them? Have they been contacted? Have they sat down with investigators and given a complete account of what they witnessed? If you are following this case and you want every verified update the moment it comes in, subscribe to this channel right now and hit the bell. This case is moving fast, and we are not going to let a single development pass without covering it. Subscribe so you are never a step behind. Now, the report documents 6 boats total. The Triton was the vessel Nolan traveled on that morning. Records from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources confirm the boat departed the southern Mississippi shoreline at 9:56 a.m. and arrived at the western tip of Horn Island at 11:14 a.m. The Palm Beach was also part of the group connected to Nolan's friends that day. Both the Triton and the Palm Beach are clearly identified in the report as being linked to the people he came to the island with. The remaining boats, Boat 1, Boat 2, Boat 3, and Boat X, appear in the photographs and the mapping data. But here is the problem. There are no confirmed passenger rosters for any of those vessels. Not one. Nobody has publicly established, with certainty, who was on each of those boats. Boat X is the one that demands attention. The UCN report notes that Boat X had already separated from the cluster of boats before 4:50 p.m., before a separate video described in the report as a fight video was recorded in the area. When Boat X left, the reason it left, and where it went after leaving, none of that is answered in the report. The organization does not connect Boat X to Nolan's disappearance, but it is a vessel that was present, moved without explanation, and has no confirmed passenger list. That is not a detail investigators can afford to set aside. There is also a serious problem with the photographs themselves. Most of the images submitted to the United Cajun Navy carry timestamps, but the organization explicitly warns in the report that a timestamp on a photograph may reflect when the image was saved, copied, or screenshotted from another device, not when the original image was actually taken. Without the source files and their embedded metadata, the precise timing of those photographs cannot be verified. In a case where individual minutes inside a 3-hour gap carry enormous weight, an unverified timestamp is not evidence. It is a question mark. Warren Hudson was one of Nolan's closest friends on the island that day. At approximately 3 p.m., Hudson said he saw Nolan
investigator, and as someone that has searched for missing persons and put together a timeline yourself, is this where you start?
Yeah, I mean, hey, what we have here is, a key eyewitness. This is an individual that Nolan arrived to Horn Island with, and he's describing the final moments of their interactions upon departing the island. And I think it's important to note in this case, eyewitnesses to a missing person case like this, when there isn't a marked event, there weren't gunshots or there wasn't an explosion that happened, right? They weren't aware that Nolan was missing for quite some time after they returned to shore. So, this individual and the other witnesses were not aware that they were witnesses at the time. So it doesn't surprise me that there have been conflicting stories. This is actually to be expected, that eyewitnesses are going to remember times different. They weren't looking at their watch or their phone to annotate the last time you saw somebody. It would be concerning if every eyewitness had the same exact story in the same exact timeline. That would actually stand out as a red flag. So, the simple fact that he's describing this sounds just like any other group of young folks going out to have a good time. Hey, he wanted to stay back for some reason, and we wouldn't have left without him if we weren't sure he wanted to stay back.
So around 4:30, he says that that's when the boat was taking on water. That's when someone on the boat made the call, which I'll play for you. But in the same interview, he said this about trying to get Nolan on the boat. And this is again around the timestamp at around 4:30, according to his account.
Nolan was sitting by the boat with that Katie girl, and my buddy yelled for Nolan, get on the boat. We're leaving. The boat's having issues. And no, he didn't say that, but he was panicking. Nolan, get the F on the boat. Get on the boat. And Nolan said, no, I'm staying out here. I'm going to ride in with somebody else. And it's not uncommon to hear, but it's not like my buddy asked him one time. My buddy asked Nolan multiple times to get on the boat. Nolan, get on the boat. Get on the boat. We're leaving. If you're coming, you got to come now. And Nolan made a decision to stay out on the island.
I guess one
Verified. Around the same time, a fake toxicology report began circulating across social media, presented as if it were official. Mississippi Department of Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tindell issued a public statement making clear that the document was fraudulent. Russ Latino, the attorney representing Nolan's friend Bart Edmiston Jr., went on record and called it out directly. The sightings contradict each other. The documents being shared online are not real. The timeline has a gap, a confirmed, undisputed gap, stretching from 4:31 p.m. to 7:30 p.m., 3 hours. And no verified account, no confirmed photograph, no authenticated video places Nolan Wells anywhere during that time. That gap is not a rumor. It is documented. And it is the center of everything. The United Cajun Navy did not release their report to make headlines. They released it because the questions surrounding this case had no organized framework. And without a framework, investigators and the public were working from fragments. Inside that 22-page document, the organization formally identified 5 specific questions they believe must be answered before any clear picture of Nolan Wells's final hours can be established. First, when exactly was Nolan last seen alive, and by whom? Second, what happened between 3:23 p.m. and 4:27 p.m. on July 4th, a window the report flags as particularly unaccounted for? Third, who was on Boat X, when did it leave the area, and why? Fourth, can the 4:31 p.m. departure of the Triton be independently confirmed through electronic records rather than witness accounts alone? And fifth, who was aboard every boat visible in those photographs, and do their individual statements actually align with what the images show? Mississippi College law professor Matt Steffi reviewed the report and offered a direct assessment. His words carry weight. He said, and this is a quote, "We are not any closer to knowing the cause of death. We are not any closer to knowing the circumstances of death, and we are not any closer to establishing anything that looks like criminal or civil liability." That is where this investigation stands right now. 5 unanswered questions, a sealed official investigation, and a report that confirms there is more unknown than known. If this case matters to you, drop a comment below. Which of those 5 questions do you think is the most critical one for investigators to answer first? Let us know. This is the kind of discussion that keeps real pressure on a case like this, and your voice is part of that. Now, one piece of this case that has not received enough attention is the physical environment where all of this unfolded. Horn Island is not a calm, predictable stretch of beach. Brian Trasher, the United Cajun Navy's vice president, described the island's shoreline in specific terms during interviews connected to the report. He said, Horn Island has an aggressive slope. What that means practically is that a person can step from relatively shallow water into significantly deeper water within just a few strides. There is very little gradual transition. Trasher also noted that several individuals visible in the submitted photographs appear to be in water that reaches armpit level or higher, depending on their height and exact position. He described some of that activity as people treading water rather than simply standing. That is not a minor distinction. On a day with confirmed rip current activity, and Trasher told CNN directly that strong rip currents were present and may have posed a real danger, the combination of a deceptive slope and moving water creates conditions that can shift quickly and without warning. This context does not answer what happened to Nolan, but it does add a layer of physical reality to the environment that afternoon, one that any complete investigation must account for. What this case now requires is evidence that has not yet been publicly confirmed as collected or fully examined. The United Cajun Navy spelled it out in detail. Investigators need the original photograph and video files, not screenshots, not copies. The source files with their embedded metadata intact. They need phone records and location data from the individuals present. They need GPS logs from the vessels in the area, engine records from the Triton, and full passenger rosters for every boat documented in those photographs. Boat registration records are a specific point the report raises as potentially significant. When a vessel is registered, it is traceable. A registration number leads to an owner. An owner leads to a passenger list. A passenger list leads to witness accounts. That chain of connections is exactly why the images showing that boat cluster have drawn such sustained attention. Those photographs may not show the moment anything went wrong, but they may show the people who were close enough to observe Nolan's movements during the hours that remain unresolved. What the UCN also made clear is that their document has already been handed to the right people. Trasher confirmed the report was delivered to Nolan's family, to the attorneys on the case, and to law enforcement. All three confirmed they received it. What happens with that information from this point forward is in the hands of investigators and, ultimately, a grand jury. The official autopsy results and toxicology findings are sealed. Under Mississippi law, that information will not be released publicly until the case is presented to a grand jury. That means the full picture, officially, is still behind closed doors. Through all of it, Nolan's family has never stopped pushing. His mother, Christine Wansley, has been relentless, posting publicly, appealing directly to anyone who was on Horn Island that day, asking for photographs, for videos, for anything. She described her son as God-fearing and full of love. His father, Elmore Wansley, said they raised Nolan with a clear principle. If you go with a group, you come back with the group. His friend Javon Williams backed that up without hesitation. He told CNN that in all the time he knew Nolan, he had never once seen him stay behind while his friends left. That was not who he was. The family commissioned an independent autopsy. The result came back with cause of death listed as undetermined. The official state autopsy is complete, but those findings remain sealed. 2 autopsies, no public answers. What this report ultimately represents is a reckoning with how much has not been established. Not a conspiracy, not a confirmed cover-up, a documented, undeniable gap in the timeline, in the witness accounts, in the chain of evidence. The people who were on those boats that afternoon are the key to closing it. Some of them may have already spoken to investigators, others may not have. Either way, the photographs exist. The boats are identifiable, and the 3 hours between 4:31 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. on July 4th remain the unresolved center of this entire investigation. The bombshell from this report is not a new confession. It is not a confirmed new witness. It is something that in some ways cuts deeper. The confirmation that this many people were this close, and the full story still has not come out. If this video gave you a clearer picture of where the Nolan Wells investigation stands, share it. Share it with someone who is following this case. Share it with someone who has not heard his name yet. Every view, every share keeps the spotlight on this family and the answers they are still fighting for. We will be here covering every verified development as it comes. Do not go anywhere.